Alexa, turn on the string lights.
Okay, does this work? Hey everybody, how's it going? Hope you're having a lovely day. So the other day there was this news release from the Consumer Product Safety Commission about the one-wheels being unsafe because they've been causing deaths, and they are telling consumers to not use this anymore. Now, we've spoken with one-wheel experts in the channel many times, whether it's Mario Contino or Josh Haley from Fiction Factory Boardworks, and I just wanted to get him on to discuss this a little bit. I think that this announcement is a little bit misleading. As much as I dislike Future Motion as a company, there are certain things when it comes to whether their products are safe or not that I think are being missed with this blanket warning. So Josh, thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely, Lewis. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to dig into here with you are the different safety issues that may or may not occur with a one wheel, and to separate them, because this makes it just sound like every single model is completely unsafe. So to my knowledge, there's two primary safety issues with these devices that we talk about. The first one is ghosting, where when you get off of the device, you dismount it, it just decides to keep on going at 20 miles an hour into somebody, which is an issue 99% of the time with the GT, not with the older ones. And the second issue is when you are riding and the device runs out of power. It's not just moving forward with the motor, it's also balancing you so that you stay upright rather than do this because you're on a one-wheel device. So at some point, if you are trying to go too fast or using too much power, it'll start to warn you by doing something called pushback. And if you ignore the pushback and keep going faster, it will run out of power and then face plant you. So one of those, the ghosting thing with the GT, tends to be a failure with the product design, whereas the pushback issue tends to be a user error. So how would you characterize that? Do you think there's any other safety issues with it?
Yeah, I mean, so you gave it a pretty good summary here. What I tell people who come into my shop is there's two general types of errors with the one wheel. There's really two errors with anything, right? There's a user error and there's a technical error. So if we want to get into the technical error side of things, you're right. I simplify these a little bit further than that. So I call them, problems where the board doesn't work when it's supposed to. So it's going to disengage, it's going to turn off when it's not supposed to. And then there's problems where the board's on where it shouldn't be, right? So that would be the ghosting situation that you described.
So when it comes to the issue with ghosting, how correct is it that most of the time this is an issue with the GT and not an issue with the older models?
So it is something that I personally have seen more on the GT than any other type of device. It's also important to note that the GT has a concave foot pad on the front, as to where every other model preceding it has a flat foot pad.
Now, this entire CPSC warning doesn't really seem to be mentioning ghosting. It's mentioning ejection hazard, as in it's tossing you off of the one wheel. How often is this user error versus a product defect? Because I've been reading online where people say there seems to be a mixture of opinions, and I can't tell which ones are the experts and which ones are the noobs, where some people say, yes, there is pushback. You should know what pushback is. The moment the device starts telling you, hey, you're using too much power, stop, and you keep going, you're being an idiot. And then there are other people that have said, I don't feel any pushback at all. It just face planted me and I got hurt and I wasn't expecting it. So is this an issue with different models using pushback differently? Is this an issue where different experience level from the riders results in different results? Or is this, a genuine defect in the product as is being alleged by CPSC?
Yeah, so the answer, to give you a coverall, is a little bit of both, right? It's very difficult to tell what is wrong with the foot pad on a technical level, because Future Motion, the manufacturer of the one wheel, doesn't tell us anything technically of how the foot pad is made, what was wrong with it, what was fixed with it. It's common with certain recalls, all recalls to my understanding, that when a product is recalled, the manufacturer has to tell you what was wrong and what was changed. And that simply isn't the case with one wheel, right? So with one wheel specifically, it's inherently dangerous, right? Just like any board sport. And again, just like any board sport, a dangerous sport can be done safely, and one wheeling is no different. So the analogy that I'm using for this situation here, because over the past day and a half or however long it's been out, I've had more than a few people reach out to me. If you go out and buy a motorcycle right now, you can buy any bike you like, you take it out on the street, and it can be your choice to lean too far into a turn and slide the bike out from under you, crash, hurt yourself, and potentially other people.
Been there.
That's not really a problem with the bike. That's a problem with you understanding how to use the bike properly. Now, that's not to say that there's no potential problem with the bike that could cause that, but it's not a guarantee that it's the fault of the bike. So to give credit where credit's due, I believe that that CPSC statement is incredibly vague, which unfortunately is something that One Wheel people have gotten familiar with correspondence and outreach by FM.
So, specifically when it comes to pushback, is how much of that would you say when people claim I did not get any pushback and the device face planted me? How much of that is one device having let's say the GT being much better or worse with pushback than let's say the XR or the Pint? How much of that is the user being an idiot, and how much of that would you say is an actual device defect?
Again, it's hard to say outside of very specific scenarios. There are plentiful cases on either side of that argument.
Which ones would you say are the arguments for it being user error?
So user error would lean more in the direction of
the moment you said of and stopped talking, a cat walked by. So I'm curious if that had anything to do with it. Are you still there? Oh, shit. Oreo, what'd you do? Oreo, why'd you do it to him like that? Oh, shit, man. Oreo, yo, man, you can't do that.
Okay. Hello?
Yeah. So my cat walked by, and the moment my cat walked by, you stopped talking. So I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah, so you're asking about user error with footpads, right?
Yeah, no, I was saying when it comes to people face planting, not ghosting, but face planting as a result of them saying, just falling off of the scooter while they're riding it because it just loses power. There are some people that say, well, there's pushback and you should have felt the pushback and you're an idiot if you kept going without it. And there are other people that say, yeah, I didn't get any pushback. So how often when somebody says, I didn't feel any pushback, it just died, how much of that is cope from an end user that was being an idiot versus, them, there being an actual defect with the device?
From what I've seen, a very large majority.
A majority is user error, or a majority of is?
So if we're talking about footpad errors relating to the problem of the board just shut off, an overwhelming majority of what I see personally is user error in that regard.
So what I find interesting about this is the ghosting issue, which is often not user error, is not mentioned in this consumer protection thing.
That's correct. I find that very suspicious as well.
Yeah, so the thing that they're getting One Wheel on is the part that's actually user error, but the part that is One Wheel's fault, they're not getting them on. So they're punishing them for saying if you ride a motorcycle, it may be dangerous versus, you have a motorcycle that when you get off of it just starts going for no reason and they're ignoring that.
Right. So if we're going to put a blanket term on, there's a problem with One Wheel. Remember, a little bit ago, we defined that as two parts, right? There's the user error part and there's the technical malfunction part of the device. I and a lot of other people I've talked with are of the understanding that the CPSC is going after FM for the user error side of this problem, when in actuality, the problem, at least I perceive, is a lot more on the technical malfunction side. And that didn't really make its presence known in that CPSC letter.
Yeah, it's very interesting that they're punishing them for what they didn't do wrong, but they're not punishing them for what they did do wrong. Correct. And the thing that they are punishing them for is literally every single model. So, I mean, if they're saying that and it doesn't even make a mention of pushback, they're saying, and also when in this, it mentions that they did not do a recall that would have been satisfactory. Future Motions refused to agree to an acceptable recall of the product. Now, when it comes to the GT and ghosting issues, that's one thing, but how do you recall the Pint, the XR, the Plus, and the GT altogether so that you don't have this issue? I mean, if they already have the device set up to supply pushback so when you're going to run out of power, what else could they reasonably have done?
Yeah, so I don't know a specific answer to that. I agree with you. I very much think that the CPSC is going after the wrong thing here. What they're complaining about seems to violate physics, right? You have a set amount of power in that board, and if you, the user, choose to overpower that board, you're going to potentially hurt yourself as you go over the front of it. So the fix for that isn't add more power to the board. It's better inform the consumer of the risks that they're taking on when purchasing and riding one of these devices, right? It's also important to note that, the CPSC is overreaching here a little bit from what I interpret, because that's the easiest thing for them to do, right? If there's a problem with one wheel product and it's difficult to get to the root cause of that one product, it's easier just to ban all of them. So I can understand the perspective that they're coming from. I don't agree with it, but I can see why they would do that, as it is the easier route.
And the worst part about this is if you're in a park and somebody sees this, they may think, oh my God, this is dangerous. Whereas the GT is the one that's going to be doing most of the ghosting. Even if you have a Pint X or a Pint or an XR or an original, you can't even tell them, no, you don't get it. Mine is not the one that ghosts. The parent is going to say, I don't want that near my kid. That's a one wheel. And it says all one wheels are dangerous. And that I think is the true tragedy here. It's not even about whether or not you or experienced riders are going to ignore this because it's BS. It's that if you go to a park or if you go somewhere else, people saying, I don't want that unsafe thing around my child because I heard from CPSC that it's bad. And that's a tragedy.
So, absolutely. I'm really glad you brought that point up, because you're right. This sets an extremely dangerous precedent for not just one wheels, but for all PEVs, right? This is something that has helped a lot of people. This is something that a lot of people rely on as a dependable source of transportation. And when the CPSC comes out and says that, hey, all these things are dangerous, and provides no technical information or further explanation as to why, I do see this as doing a disservice to this industry that is growing.
Do you think that they're... I guess that's a little bit too speculative. I was going to ask, do you think there's anything that Future Motion could have done differently to avoid the CPSC warning? Like, how do you think that they pissed them off?
2020, right?
Because the thing is, they poked the bear. So, like, in order for the CPSC to go after you, have to poke the bear in some way.
Absolutely. And if we want to get into that topic, we can dig in that to a little bit, right?
Yeah, like, so, what do you think they may have done to poke the bear? And I understand this is complete speculation for any fuckface lawyers watching, so...
Yeah, so a lot of people might not like this, but this has been a long time coming, right? The One Wheel or Future Motion rather, has acted in such a way that they have stripped a lot of the value from the product that they sell to their consumers now by producing a product that has increased margin. And you lose certain features in a newer board that were present on older boards and are no longer here. So things like battery voltage, things like seeing individual battery cells, certain diagnostics data that allows you, the user, to determine if your wheel is safe to ride or not. Doing things like this makes it harder for the user to know the state of their device. And there's an argument to be made that it makes the device more dangerous to operate.
I'm also kind of curious if the combative, when the conversation with Kyle video they put out, it pretty much ignored 99% of the points that the community was bringing up. And I'm very curious if that type of response style when dealing with a government agency is part of what led them to say, screw all of your products. Because this complaint doesn't seem to be coming from a place of fact. It seems to be coming from a place of screw you guys.
Yeah, so we can play speculation all we want here. The truth of the matter is neither you or I have been involved with anything within FM regarding this situation. But if past patterns are to repeat themselves, FM is a company that's proved that they're going to try and do the absolute minimum to get by.
Yeah, so this one guy in my chat said, anything this dangerous marketed to young people is always going to result in injury. The same way these parents complain about products by their kids, a sports car, everything is dangerous. I remember when I was a kid, we would get, we would buy Mongoose mountain bikes because they were cheap. You can get them for like $70. And the crap that we did, it would be raining. And when it was raining and the ground was slick, we would try to skid because we had one of the block that we lived on was sloped downhill. We would play this game where we tried to skid the entire length of the block after the half of it without falling down. People are going to do stupid shit when you give them bicycles, skateboards, rollerblades, and stuff like this. And it's kind of, I don't like the idea that you're going to just blanket ban a product because a few people got hurt that were not wearing a helmet.
Right.
I could understand them saying, listen, man, these models provide proper pushback. This one, it really should provide what the others ones we would do. We need you to upgrade the firmware in these so that they do, or discontinue it. Or, the foot pads in this one are not up to snuff. These ones are. What can you do to make it work? Not like ban every single one of them because a sport may be dangerous.
Absolutely.
So what do you think consumers of this product should do? Do you think they should be contacting CPSC to say, like, you got this wrong? You're like, there's a lot to hate future motion for, and there's a lot we would want people to focus on them for, but this is the wrong thing. Like, what should people in the PEV community do to ensure that we don't live in a world where some mom in a park goes, get that thing away from my son?
So I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to do, and it's what I recommend other people do as well. There is a form on onewheel's website to create a survey entry as to why you want to keep your onewheel and what onewheel means to you. It's my personal recommendation not to use that form. The reason being, onewheel has spent Future Motion has spent a lot of time and a lot of money working to separate the terms onewheel and future motion. Because of this, if you're not within the onewheel community, you'll learn very quickly that there is an intense affinity and love for this product. And there's a lot to be desired as far as loving the company that makes the product. So staying within that vein, if we're going to, preserve the onewheel product, we need to contact the manufacturer. We need to contact the CPSC rather directly. So what I'm going to be doing here is not using that form on Future Motion's website because I want to preserve the product that Future Motion has created, not the practices Future Motion uses. So I'm going to CPSC directly to voice my concern over what I think is the right thing to do here, which is to analyze in more technical detail what causes the product to fail outside of user control and what specifically makes the device unsafe. I want to know in detail what they found to determine that all of these should be banned.
I think that consumers have the right to that information. If they're going to make a sweeping statement like that, like this, nobody should use this device, then they should be able to provide evidence and specific examples as to what it is that makes it that unsafe. As much as I dislike Future Motion as a company, like this is going to reflect badly on everything, e-bikes and everything else. And
like I said, this is going to set a very dangerous precedent moving forward if very large swinging decisions like this can pass with no conflict, right? There's an increasing number of people entering into the personal electric vehicle space, and that's a good thing. That should be encouraged. There should be a safe space within this community where we can discuss, what these devices are capable of, and when things unfortunately go wrong, we, the consumers who own these products, have a right to know in detail what is wrong with it and how to fix it.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna contact them myself as well, because and I hope people in the audience do as well. If you're going to say every one of these products is bad, you should be able to explain why that is. You should be able to explain the difference between something like ghosting versus ignoring pushback versus random failures, where maybe if you can actually definitively prove that there are specific devices where pushback doesn't actually work or exist, then that's one thing. But somebody ignoring pushback, not wearing a helmet, you can't ruin a sport for that. You can't. Like, some people
can't fault a device for user error.
You can't. And as much as I despise a lot of the way Future Motion treats their customers, the anti-repair practices, and some of what I find to be design flaws with their device, like using what looks like a laptop fan connector to charge a battery. We went into that for 3 hours already. None of that is what they're being called out for. This is a fun one. A fun, good comment from Erosion139. Why don't they mandate helmets and safety gear instead of banning the product? Think of cars and seatbelts. They didn't ban the car for danger, but made seatbelts mandatory.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the directions I wanted to swing this here. So
seatbelts mandatory on the onewheel.
Yes. Maybe we built it into it.
Yes.
So if we, enter a little thought experiment here, what if this letter came out and said that all motorcycles were banned because a couple of people slid out and crashed on a motorcycle? Are we going to fault every motorcycle manufacturer for that?
And there are people that do crazy shit on motorcycles on a regular basis.
That's right.
How many times have you seen somebody lane splitting at 127 miles an hour?
More times than I should have.
I've lane split in New York City when the traffic is going at 12 miles an hour, and it's like, oh my god, I want to bang my head against the wall here, because nobody's moving. But 100, I've seen enough of the whole 120, 130 mile an hour. There's a lot of ways you could kill yourself in a motorcycle that have nothing to do with anything that Honda did.
Absolutely. So carrying this analogy a little bit further here, Just like you can overpower a one wheel if you do so choose and go over the front, you can lean too far on a motorcycle and go over. That's not a fault of the device. The difference between motorcycles crashing and one wheels crashing is that there is a single manufacturer for one wheel, as to where there's many different manufacturers for motorcycles. When you have many different manufacturers, you have competition between them and you get a more qualitative product as a result, right?
Yeah.
You don't get that with the one wheel. You only have one manufacturer. And as I've said before, and as we have a community have seen, the product has decreased in quality over time because there is no competition to maintain that level of safety and quality in the product.
Until 2035, right?
Until the patents expire.
Yeah, that sucks. Well, you've answered just about all of my questions.
Are there any more questions in the comments? I love answering these.
Let's see what we have. Do we have any questions? Let's see. Stupid questions about Twitter.
I'm trying to pull up your video on my end here. I can't see it.
I have it on my live. I stream to my live channel and I edit it from my main channel.
That would be why I can't see it.
Can EUC manufacturers pitch in for the fear of being under the same radar? What's an electric unicycles?
Hey everybody, how's it going?
Just saying hi, Josh. I see people doing wheelies in a motorcycle at least once a month in New York City. Oh yeah, you're talking about the dirt bikes. I see that all the time. It's so unfortunate how Future Motion's one wheel has defined this form factor of a board. There are shining examples of other boards like eSkates that have engineered beyond all technical deficiencies. From Mario Contino. Hello, Mario. How are you?
Yep. Mario and I were talking about this earlier today.
I got to talk to you later about that bullshit law with e-bike batteries in New York City, but that's going to be a topic for another video. So I think I'm going to call it a night. My kitty is asking me to pay him more attention, and, well, I mean, he deserves more attention. Thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. I'll leave a link down below to where you guys can find Josh, and I hope you learned something.
Yep. And one more thing, if I can, before we go here.
Absolutely.
If you do have concerns about your one wheel and you think that it could potentially be unsafe, there is an entire national repair network of shops that work together to provide the service that manufacturers either choose to ignore or just aren't aware of. So like I said, if you do have concerns, we have a website, eriderepair.com. If you want to send it to me or talk to me directly, you can find me at my site, fictionfactory.net. Like I said, any concerns you have with servicing wheels, working on wheels, maintenance, anything, we're here to help. So please reach out if you feel the need. And again, thank you for having me on this.
Thank you for taking the time to answer my dumb questions. I always appreciate learning.
Anytime.
All right. You have a good day.